Okay, let's talk about some of the things you'll need for training that you'll see us using. I got my goodie bag right here. First of all, let's define a Bowie knife. Bowie knives came in many different shapes and configurations historically. In my mind, and for what we're going to do, a Bowie knife is at least 6 inches. Preferably 8 inches all the way up to 10 or 12 inches. I like the 10-inch length the best, seems to be the most comfortable. This is just a typical Filipino trainer that's about a 6-inch blade. You're going to see as we go that one of the benefits of a bigger blade is that you can use the blade itself to block, just like you would use a sword or a saber. You start getting smaller than about 6 inches and you start losing that advantage, and you can't really block with the blade itself. So in my mind, anything less than 6 inches shouldn't really be considered a fighting Bowie knife. Maybe it's a good camp knife, but it's not going to be a good knife to fight with like we're going to talk about in this method. So at least 8 inches in my mind, and 10 is kind of ideal. So obviously you're not going to be training with a sharp knife, hopefully, because you're going to have safety in mind. So you need some training knives. I have several. A training knife should match the knife that you own that's sharp as closely as possible, because if that's the knife you were going to use in a pinch, in self-defense, home defense, then you want your training knife to be as close to it as possible. When I started out many years ago, there were nobody making commercially available training knives. Your option was to make it yourself. So this is a training knife I made many years ago out of oak. You can see it's got the typical deep belly and the clip point for a Bowie, and I couldn't put a crossguard on it, so I just made a flare here that worked the same as a crossguard. I even put a coffin handle on it, and this served me very well for many years, my oak Bowie. This is another good one to kind of illustrate some of the common characteristics that I like with the Bowie knife. Back in the day, really, people would say Bowie knife, and they referred to any big knife you carried on your belt, essentially, as a Bowie knife. But today, we kind of think of the Bowie knife as I said before, at least 8 inches long, sometimes longer. It's got a single curved edge. It's usually got a pretty good belly, and this belly has a point here that's very sharp, and this is used for one of the signature techniques with a Bowie knife, snap cut, where you hit with this portion. The back edge here comes to a point that's off-center and angled this way, and this is often sharp, and this is designed to be able to deliver another one of the signature moves of the Bowie knife, the back cut, which hits with that back edge, boom, and it can cut. And that point is aimed that way, so that as it hits, you're hitting with the point and ripping through something, like using the talon of an eagle or a claw of an animal to go through something versus slicing through. Okay? So, important features of a Bowie knife is that deeper, broader belly, recurve, off-center point Bowie knife. So, different materials from wood are now available. One of them is an aluminum. This was made by an individual, but I bought it from him many years ago. I don't know if he's still around and making them, but obviously this is the real deal. This is an Ontario Hell's Bell Bowie, and this was aluminum trainer version. You can see they match almost perfectly. Even it's a little lighter, but the feel is very much the same as the real thing. Now the problem with aluminum is it's a relatively soft metal, so if you're training with somebody else with aluminum and you're doing blade on blade work and you're making impact, you can cause little divots in the aluminum and create a little burr, and that little burr can actually snag and mess up somebody's clothes or create some pretty good scratches and some bleeding, and so you have to kind of be vigilant and have a file available and file down those burrs when they happen. The other thing about aluminum is it's too realistic. We do a lot of training at a local park, and if I'm out there with this moving around, the bystanders, they don't know that this is aluminum. They think it's a real knife, so they're likely to get excited, maybe call the cops, who knows. So when I'm in public, I tend not to use the aluminum for that reason. So there are synthetics. This is ideal. This is a polycarbonate made by the guy at Tack Knives. I'll provide a link for that. This polycarbonate does not get dinks and dings like the aluminum, won't develop burrs. Wooden knives will also develop these little burrs. You can imagine you get a big dent in your wood, you can have a little splinter stick up and it'll snag just like the little dent on the aluminum wood. The synthetics don't do that. And this is a polycarbonate that is just damn near indestructible. And what's nice about it is as you use it, it gets nice and smooth, so it's not likely to hit, to snag or cut with an edge. And it's relatively thick. I'll show you profile. Relatively thick, so that it's less likely to cause a problem with impact because it's got a wide surface to strike on. This one is meant to also mimic the Hell's Bell or the Cold Steel Laredo Bowie. You can see they've got, this one's got a leather wrapped handle, this one's got a paracord wrapped handle. Very, very nice knives. We'll spar with these because again it's got a wide surface area, it doesn't hurt as much. Another thing you'll see sometimes is somebody has taken an actual steel blade and then ground the edge off of it to use for training. I don't like that because even though it's not technically sharp, it's still a dull knife. And a dull knife still has an edge and can do some damage. They're dangerous because the reason this is not dangerous is because it has that wide edge. If I take and grind all the edge off of an actual knife, it still has a very narrow edge and can still do some damage. So you got to have a training knife. One of the other things we use a lot, you need a target. This is my version of a focus mitt for knives. I just took a plastic kid's baseball bat, and this is from a pool noodle that was hollow. Put that noodle on there, and then I can hold that out there, and my guys, different angles, and my guys can practice snap cuts and back cuts, and they can target against this. I can swing it at them like it's a limb coming, and they can practice doing cuts on it. It really does function just like a focus mitt would for punches. And we also use a focus mitt at times. Another very important training is bob. Bob is invaluable in my mind. It costs about $300 now, I think, but it's just invaluable for practicing targeting and striking. Bob is like the modern day Pell. Remember back in the day, a Pell was just a wooden post that people would practice hitting against to get used to striking something. Well, bob is that ideal because you've got targeting. Again, if I'm using a knife like this, I don't have to worry about hurting bob. It's not going to cut him, it's not going to tear him because it's got nice smooth surfaces and a wide edge. Okay? So the advantage of having bob is now I'm targeting, so I can practice where I want my cuts to go. I can target to a temple, to an eye, to the chest, over the heart, to the ribs, abdomen. It's just invaluable to have bob when you're working some of these techniques with the knife. When we get to training contact, these are from Edgar Salita's Lameco Escrima. You can still buy them on his site, the Lameco Escrima site. I'll put up a link for that. This is a bracer. It fits on, and it has rattan slats. Rattan slats in it, so you can slide this sucker on, put it down, and then it can take a hell of a blow, right? So one of the guys can put it on, I can have the knife, can feed different things, and the other guy can practice targeting here, right? With back cuts, snap cuts. That's a major target when you're doing this kind of knife fighting. Even the handguard comes in handy because I got the handguard and the same thing. This handguard has kind of a plastic inner lining with cushioning. You can see the cushion. And again, it can take a lot of damage. So when we're sparring, I don't use a padded knife. I don't I don't like that. I use this. We have on the armor fencing mask, but you can see I can still move well with this, and I'm protected to shots. So very, very handy to have when you're training these things. I wanted to show you one other thing. The other video I mentioned Kali Illustrissimo. This is a pretty typical Kali length and configuration for a Kali sword that would be used in something like Kali Illustrissimo and some of the other systems. And I just wanted to show how it essentially is like a very big Bowie knife, which is why a lot of the techniques based on the sword in Kali translate over so well to the Bowie knife. And there's only so many ways to move. One of the key motions, key footwork in Kali Illustrissimo is called lutang, or the pendulum step. And it's kind of like a signature move for Antonio Illustrissimo, where if something's coming in, he would move back and then come forward again. But if you know anything about Western swordsmanship, you know that there was a manual in the 1700s written about Highland broadsword, and one of the key features of this, they're squared off with a backsword or a saber. One of the key features is that on every block, they step back and forward again. Back and forward. And they called it the leg slip. And it's exactly the same thing as this lutang or pendulum step that Antonio Illustrissimo was using. So obviously, the cuts he would use are very similar to what you see in some of classical Western swordsmanship. So some people are very into being historical as possible and don't like blending things, but I contend that a lot of the techniques that we're going to draw from Kali Illustrissimo were part of Western swordsmanship, and we have a much more recent version of it that was actually used in combat and taught to people that are still alive today. So we have that unbroken succession of real life working sword technique. So that's just my rant for now. And that's it as far as equipment. And we'll probably see other things, and I'll talk about other things as we go.